Hey everyone, it's Mrs. Wingert here with some book talks. I am so excited about today and sharing some of my favorite books and some of the most popular books that kids have read over the years in my class. You should have this page in front of you. What should I read next? And something to write with. What you'll do when I talk about a book is you will write down the author's name or the title of the book and the author if you have time. If not, the title will be good. And then what you rate the book. So if I talk about a book and you definitely want to read it, you're like, oh my gosh, that sounds like the best book ever, then you will rate it a 1 and you'll put that rating right in here. If you're like, ooh, that sounds pretty good, I'm pretty sure I'd like to read that, put a 2. And I'd have to know more about that book, I might want to read it, you would rate it a 3. The rating is just for you, and so if you find that you're excited about a lot of books, you might want to start, instead of putting 111 on all of them, you might want to do like 1.5, or ooh, this one's a little better than the one I just heard about, so 1.7. So you're welcome to do that, just to show yourself which ones you like best. And then in the notes, what I would put if I were you, I would definitely put the genre, because that's going to help you find it in the library. And I have that listed on the slide. And there could be 1 or 2 or a few that might be off from what the library categorizes it. But for the most part, that'll get you to the section where you want to find it. So put the genre, like realistic, verse, sports, something like that. And then in your notes, just put a reason that you think you might want to read it. Maybe funny, or if it's about, or if it's baseball, or something that will remind you something about the book. Okay, so here we go. Oh, and if you don't want to read a book, don't write it down. And it's okay to end today with a blank page. I would rather you have a blank page than for you to write books down that you really don't want to read. If you have a blank page, then Mrs. Hoffman or I will try to find you a book just based on talking to you and see what you've liked from what you've read before. If there's nothing that you like, we'll see what we can do. So hopefully you have at least a book or 2 by the end of class, but if not, don't just feel pressured to put one down. Okay, here we go. You'll have access to this slideshow in Schoology. I'd like you to watch it as a class, just because that's I think it'll help us stay focused a little bit better, but you can always go back. And when you do, you can click on the author's names to learn more about them and their books. Like maybe you have a certain favorite author and you're like, ooh, what else has this author written? You can go and find that out at their website. And then you can click on each of the books for a summary of the book if you don't remember from what I tell you about it. And you'll see I'll be clicking on it. There's some of the books that I haven't read for a while. Some books I haven't even read, so I'll click on it and probably read you the summary. Before we get into the book talks, I want to show you how to look for a book whenever you, like, because I'm going to talk about a lot of books today, but you might want to look on your own and see if there's a different book. You don't have to get a library book on Friday from the books that I've talked about. You can get whatever sounds good to you. But Destiny Discover, the 2 things between Destiny Discover and Sora. Destiny Discover, that's the actual books. They've got a few playaways and audiobooks that you can check out there, but for the most part it's actual books that are in our library. Sora is an online reading. You can read the books online on your Chromebook, and that's okay for my class as well. You can also get audiobooks there. The only thing I ask, if you get an audiobook, you also have to have a book in print so that you can follow along with the words. But just a really quick on Destiny Discover, if you click there, you can log in and sign in with Google. You don't have to log in to look at a book, but if you find a book that's not available and you want to put it on hold, you have to be logged in. So I want to show you how to do that. So you can see that I'm logged in here up at the top. And then if you know what genre you like, here's adventure, dystopian, fantasy, historical fiction, horror, humor, mystery, novels in verse, realistic, relationships, sports, science fiction. Asian, they even have a section with Asian voices, Black voices, disability voices, Indigenous voices, Latinx voices, LGBTQ voices, multiracial voices, and neurodiverse voices. So if any of those topics or genres interest you, you can just click on it. Let's say you really like a good mystery. So you click on mystery, and these are all the mystery books that we have in our library. And you can see most of them will be in because we haven't had library checkout yet. Actually, some of them might be gone because maybe kids have been to the library today. So if you go, oh, I really want to read that, I'm interested in finding more about this book, you click on it and it'll tell you about it. But here's where you place it on hold. If it says out and you want to check it out, place it on hold, and they will... our new librarian, Mrs. Brown, is not here this year. She moved over to East Trails, but our new librarian is Mrs. Dampier, and she'll put that on hold for you. Oh, and Mrs. Shaw is the library clerk, and they'll put that on hold for you. They'll email you and let your homeroom teacher know when it's in, and you can periodically check back. So that is Destiny Discover. And then Sora, here you have to go to Reading and Sora. I don't know why my link worked that way, sorry. When you get there, if you haven't logged in before, it's going to make you log in. Here's the information on how to do that. So Mrs. Hoffman, if you can help kids do that if they need to. Your username is your lunch number only, and your password is your first initial capitalized, your last initial not capitalized, plus your lunch number. And usually once you've logged in, you don't have to do that anymore. Explore is where you go to look for books there. They also have some recommended books down at the bottom. It's set up a little bit differently. They have some magazines. I'm not going to let you read magazines in my class, but you can read those for flight time. There's some newly added ones. But so what typically when kids go here, they're looking for an audiobook for a book they already have. So let's say I'm reading the book called Out of My Mind by Sharon Draper. And I go down here and I look, oh, I can read the book. It says borrow, so it's available. And then this little icon here tells me that it's also available in audio. So I can either check out the book from the library, just walk to the library and check it out and have it in my hand. And then when I click on this one, it will read to me. Or I could also borrow it and read it in print on the computer. If you want to read it on the computer and listen to it on the computer, you'll have to check both of these out under different, you have to go to Sora under 2 different tabs. I can help you with that, and that's probably not something you'll do right away, but if it is, then I am, Mrs. Hoffman can help you. Otherwise, I'll help you when I get back. All right, moving on to some book talks. Let's see, and I have to watch my time, and I can't really see it very well. Okay, I have time for a couple books on this one, and then I'll make another video. I can only do 15 minutes on one video, and I think I'm at 8 minutes already. This is Child Called It by Dave Peltzer, and those of you that have had me before, don't worry, I'm not doing all the books. I have new books in here as well, but I have to talk about Child Called It because it is the book that I give anyone to read that says, I hate reading. So if you are that person, I'm going to ask you to write down Child Called It. Once you hear what it's about, if it doesn't sound interesting, you can scratch it off. But Child Called It is a true story about Dave Peltzer, who was abused as a child. One of the worst child abuse cases in the history of California back in the 70s. He was abused so horribly by his mother. He was beaten, starved, stabbed, burned, you name it. And the reasons are really unknown, but he was not treated well. Dave is a motivational speaker now, and so the story is really of hope. You find out in the first chapter that he gets rescued. He gets adopted by he gets in foster home, but his teacher finds out that he has been abused and sends him to the health room. And so the first chapter is called The Rescue, and then the next chapter flashes back to good times, back when things were good with his mom, and they had a great family with his brothers and his dad, who's a fireman. And then it just moves on to show you how everything comes to be. So it starts out with with abuse right from the beginning. And so if that is hard for you to read, then you don't want to check out Child Called It. But I will tell you, it keeps you turning the page because you just want to find out the next horrible thing that this mom does. And it's nice to know from the beginning that he does get rescued. So you've read Child Called It last year and you're looking for another one kind of like that. When Dave moved out of his home, his brother Richard was abused. And so Richard has a story called A Brother's Journey. And he not only talks about his abuse, but he talks about how horrible he feels. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. How horrible he feels because of how he treated his brother. He treated his brother like an it. These two books are not as popular with kids, but it is Dave's life in a foster home and Dave's life as an adult. He has lots and lots of more books as well. So that's Child Called It and A Brother's Journey by Dave Peltzer. This one is Closer to Nowhere by Ellen Hopkins. And, oh gosh, I forgot the girl's name. So I'm going to show you what I do here. I think the girl's name's Hannah, but it's told from a main character of a girl. Let's just click on it. A girl named Hannah and then her cousin, Cal. So if you want to find out about the book, you click on it. And it'll take you to a Goodreads account. And on Goodreads, you can see what people typically have rated this book. So that's kind of good. Oh, it is Hannah. So for the most part, Hannah's life is just how she wants it. 2 supportive parents, popular at school. She's been killing it at gymnastics. But her cousin Cal moves in with her family. Everything changes. Cal tells half-truths, tall tales, pranks and he pranks Hannah constantly. Seems to be the reason her parents are fighting more and more. Nothing is how it used to be. She knows that Cal went through a lot after his mom died, and she's trying to be patient, but most days Hannah just wishes Cal never moved in. For Cal, he's trying his hardest to fit in, but not everyone is appreciative of his unique sense of humor and storytelling. Humor and stories might be his defense mechanism, but if Cal doesn't let his walls down soon, he might push away the very people who are trying best to love him. And so the book is told back and forth from Hannah's point of view and then Cal's, and you really have to pay attention to that. It's written in verse. I'll have Mrs. Hoffman hold up a verse book so that you can see how it's not just, it's not written in a lot of paragraphs, so it'll be quicker to read. And I know some of my kids read it last year. I read it last year. Really super good book, Closer to Nowhere. This one is Rash by Pete Hotman. And for Rash, in this takes place in the future, like 70 years into the future. And Bo Marsden is the main character's name. And he he lives in a community where football is illegal, pizza is illegal, saying bad things to people. I know bullying's not allowed and it's looked down upon, but in this book, it's illegal and you'll go to prison. And so he actually ends up going to a prison. I think he's in high school, maybe middle school, for he's accused of passing on a rash to someone. And so he's putting in prison. He also has a thing at the beginning where he calls someone or bumps into someone and ends up almost going to jail for that. So it's kind of interesting to think about like what life could be if something like that were to happen. The one thing I do like about the book too, his grandpa, he calls him Gramps, is an old alcoholic grandfather he'll always say like, back in the good old days when McDonald's was just a place to get food, because I think McDonald's is the name of the prison. So, and then also Bo has a computer that he built as a project, and his computer becomes one of his best friends and tries to get him out of prison. But in the prison, he gets to play football and eat pizza because, they don't care about the kids that come in there. So it's good. It's got some funny parts to it, and it used to be super popular. I had a kid read it last year and brought it back as popular. So I hope you check out Rash by Pete Hotman. I'm going to stop here for book talks, and then there's 3 more, 15 minutes each, so you can move on to the next book talk.